Good evening, visitors. Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Grant Pinder. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Edward Harris, whose story will be told shortly. We're also honoured to acknowledge the Vietnam Veterans Association, Bendigo branch, members of the Canterbury Helston Park RSL, and council members of the Australian War Memorial. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, East Maitland Public School, and from Western Australia, Christchurch Grammar School Primary Department, Claremont. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
Rest on.
I invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Party A10, Party present, arms.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice.
Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we pay tribute to Private John Edward Harris. Known to family and friends as Jack, John Edward Harris was born on the 1st of July 1918 in Dulwich Hill, New South Wales, the eldest of 4 boys and 3 girls born to William and Margaret Harris. The Harris family grew up at the family grocer's shop, and Jack Harris attended the local school in Lewisham, where he was dux of his intermediate year. Following school, and in the midst of the Great Depression, the family were greatly excited when Jack was offered a position as honey grader at the Producers Distributing Society. He was at first based in Sydney, but after a promotion moved to Melbourne. On the 24th of February 1941, Jack Harris enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force at Royal Park in Melbourne. He was posted to the 2nd 21st Battalion, part of the 23rd Brigade of the 8th Division. The battalion began training at Toorawul in central Victoria before they marched 235 kilometres to Bonegilla near Wodonga. There they trained until March 1941, when they made the journey by truck through the Red Centre to Darwin. The battalion was slated to reinforce Dutch units based on the island of Ambon in the Netherlands East Indies, but first endured an unhappy 9-month stay in Darwin. Following Japan's entry into the war in early December 1941, the 2nd 21st Battalion was finally sent to Ambon, where it joined supporting Australian units to become Gulf Force. The Japanese invaded Ambon on the 30th of January 1942 and quickly overwhelmed the Dutch forces. Despite acts of brave and determined resistance, the 2nd 21st Battalion could not hold back the Japanese. 2 companies of the battalion surrendered at Lahar Airfield on the 2nd of February and were massacred. The remainder of the men, including Private Harris, surrendered a day later and were imprisoned in their former barracks at Tan Tway. Conditions for prisoners of war on Ambon were harsh. The prisoners were starved and worked to death. By 1945, conditions were desperate, and large numbers of prisoners began succumbing to tropical illnesses and disease, including Harris, who died on the 2nd of April 1945 from beriberi, an illness caused by vitamin deficiencies brought on by the captives' meagre diet. He was 26 years old. Over 70% of the Australian prisoners of war on Ambon did not survive the war. Jack Harris's brothers, Kevin, Bill and Patrick, also served. Kevin and Bill joined the Royal Australian Air Force. Kevin served as a mechanic with No. 3 Squadron in Africa, Sicily and Italy. Bill served as a radar technician in New Guinea and on Manus Island. Patrick served with the 2nd 26th Battalion and, like Jack, was a prisoner of the Japanese. Patrick spent his captivity in Changi at Singapore. When the war ended on the 15th of August 1945, the Harris family had not received much news about the fates of Jack and Patrick. Both had been reported as missing and little more had been discovered over the past 3.5 years. Relief came in September when Patrick's name appeared on a list of recovered prisoners of war published in the newspaper. This brought much jubilation to the family, but that afternoon a telegram was delivered to Mrs. Harris at the grocery shop announcing that Jack had died several months earlier. Jack Harris is buried in the Ambon War Cemetery. His epitaph, chosen by his family, reads, "He gave his life for us. We shall not forget Jack, R.I.P." His name is listed here on the Roll of Honour on my left among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Edward Harris, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Catapult party present. Arms. shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party outwards. Turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and I wish you a very good evening.